is Dr. Ami Shah, and I am so honored to be the moderator for our Personalized Medicine Digital Health track today. I am an internal medicine, integrative medicine, pharmaceutical physician executive turned entrepreneur. I have a startup in children's health and wellness for children with challenges called Face-to-Face Health. And what a better segue after Nat talking about big data to now talk with our esteemed panelists here today about how big data impacts precision medicine and then leads to personalized medicine. So it is my honor and pleasure to be the moderator. I welcome our amazing panelists, and I thank our TiE co-chairs for this amazing opportunity to be here today. So today we have with us amazing panelists from different sectors of personalized, precision, and big data analytics. And I'm gonna ask each of them to introduce themselves, their background, and some of the important initiatives they're in, and what do they consider precision medicine, data analytics, and personalized medicine. I'm just gonna quickly mention their names before they get started. So to my right, I have Dr. Corina Shtir. She's the head of precision medicine at Thermo Fisher Scientific. To her right, we have Dr. Kevin Knopf, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Cancer Commons and Director of Oncology at VivioHealth.com. And to my left, I have Katherine Chou, who's the Head of Product and Healthcare Research. So we're gonna have an amazingly important and educative conversation with you, but it's going to be short, and so let's get started right away. So my first question for our panelists today is, can you please tell us a little bit about your impressive backgrounds and what you consider big data analytics, precision, and personalized medicine? So how about we start with you, Corina?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. An honor, sorry, you can hear me, right? An honor to be here today. Glad to see that we, the biotech, the precision medicine group have been invited here. In short, my background is very colorful, I should say. I spent most of my life in academia, too much time in grad school. That allowed me to explore many areas from population genomics, biostatistics, computational biology, mathematics, and so forth. So much so that at one point, one of my colleagues has reached out to me while I was at the Wellcome Trust, Cambridge, UK, and he has said, look, if you really want a challenge, why don't you come join Thermo Fisher Scientific, back then Life Technologies, and why don't you utilize all of the information to drive large-scale population programs? So I have taken the challenge. My first task was to lead the Saudi Human Genome Program from scratch, to come up with a solution that would allow us to screen for rare disorders within Saudi, since there is a high prevalence rate within the Saudi population of rare disorders. And then we went from that program and we reached globally into many other areas. I'll talk briefly about that. But to come back to your question, this is my background at high level. I now lead precision medicine across Thermo Fisher Scientific. My opinion about precision medicine is there is a long road ahead. We probably utilize this, I should say, words too loosely right now. And it's our responsibility, our opportunity to come up with a very comprehensive molecular profile for individuals. And that does not include just genomics. It includes the full multi-omic approach, as we call it, proteomics, metabolomics, phenotypic data, and how do we then handle all that data, as we have here, my colleagues, in a way that allows us to come with standardized ways that we can swiftly then produce cost-effective and time-effective solutions. So this is, I should say, the background.
All right, great. So data isn't just one aspect. It's multiple aspects that's happening currently in the healthcare industry to then help drive precision medicine and then hopefully make personalized medicine choices. So, Kevin, I'd love to hear your background and your thoughts on big data and personalized and precision medicine and what impact some of your current initiatives are having.
Right. So I've done a couple of things. I started off as a computer programmer, and then I studied mechanical engineering and did a lot of modeling, finite element modeling. And then I went to medical school and trained as a hematologist-oncologist. So I've been in the clinic as an oncologist and taking care of patients on a daily basis. And at the same time, I trained in statistics, epidemiology, and an area called health services research, which looks at how healthcare is delivered, and in particular, cost effectiveness, which is looked at cost-effective ways or economically viable ways of delivering healthcare. And that's important because if you want to solve problems in the American healthcare system, you have to realize that the economic incentives are misaligned, and until they're aligned better, you're not going to be able to solve a lot of problems. So in combining all of those, I started doing more work. I'm a senior visiting scientist at Evidera, which is doing a lot of cost-effectiveness work for pharma companies. And I started working with some Silicon Valley startups over the past couple of years. And now I'm working with Cancer Commons, which is a not-for-profit, and I'm chief medical officer there, and Vivio Health. And they're both solving the problem in different ways. One of the problems with big data in cancer care is that it's disaggregated and it's siloed, and so Cancer Commons is a white hat, an umbrella organization where we can actually create point-of-care epidemiology tools to get it to the doctors in the clinic. And Vivio Healthcare is solving a different problem, which is that we're worried about the cost of healthcare, particularly specialty care pharma. And so in that regard, personalized medicine means getting the patient the right treatment for the right price, and some other stuff I do. And I think these terms precision and personalized are misused so much. I wrote down a definition. I don't know if it's the right definition, but to me, precision medicine is about getting the right treatment to the right patient at the right time and at the right cost. And so if I define precision medicine that way, then the whole universe of omics and that sort of data becomes just another Bayesian prior that you take to the clinic to see if it enhances the way you deliver care. So when you're taking care of a cancer patient, there's a lot of things you have to aggregate in yourself in order to figure out the right decision. Omics is part of that, and sometimes it's very helpful and points you in the right direction to get the better outcome for your patient. And that can be an economically viable outcome. You can use omic information to be cost effective. And then another level, I would define personalized medicine as when you take all this other information you have and your data and you combine it with the patient's wishes and preferences. So I think there's sometimes fear on physician parts that will be replaced by a computer, but on one level, medicine always has to be very personalized. You have to act as your patient's advocate and advisor. You have to meet with the patient face-to-face sometimes through other means, but you have to get the patient's preferences and wishes because illness is sort of a very personalized thing. It differs from one patient to another, and you have to be there and have an ongoing iterative discussion with the patient. So that's how I differentiate personalized from precision.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Completely agree as practitioners. And I know Corina wants to add just one comment per request, and then Katherine will get right to you.
Thank you.
All right, great.
So I didn't answer completely the question as to what do I think precision medicine is. So yes, I did specify the multi-omics angle. What also I think precision medicine forces us to do right now, and it's probably the best thing that ever happened to all of us, is the fact that we have to collaborate. We have to collaborate, academia, biopharma, the government, the FDA, industry, and so forth. We all need to collaborate in such a way that everything we produce from our end, all the data, all the big data that comes out of Thermo Fisher, from genomics to proteomics and so forth, can be then combined, for example, with the digital health and digital management of data that Katherine can talk about, and can be then connected with Kevin in a way that Kevin then allows us to have that full interpretation of data. What does that mean? And to have access to it. So I wanted to say that.
So that's a great example of how each individual on the panel will impact point of care for both clinicians providing the care and patients getting impacted by that care. And that's a great segue into Katherine Chou, who's head of product and research at Google, and can elaborate further on that collaborative aspects and her background as well.
Thanks. Just a little bit more about my background. I've been at Google for 13 years, and I started off going straight into industry after getting my master's in computer science. And so I've been at Google incubating new products for quite some time, and I have been lucky enough to work in many, many different industries at this point. And I got into healthcare about a little over 3 years ago. And at that point in time, I started applying, and my particular team focuses on applying machine learning to life sciences and healthcare data to make it more accurate and make it more accessible. So I can talk a little bit more about that, but also one of the other things that I do, and I'm quite passionate about, is protecting wildlife and the environment. And I see this all connected because in the same way that we look at the data that comes from healthcare and our environment, the more you take care of the environment, I do think that affects your health, and the better your health is, you might actually take care of the environment better too. So personally, I'm quite passionate about both of those things being tied together. And then in terms of precision medicine and personalized medicine, so precision for us and my team is pretty specific because as I said before, our mission is to help improve the accuracy and access of care. And so we try very much to use big data and deep learning and all of these things to reduce the number of false positives and false negatives that are seen in the space. And so that means, for every false negative, you might end up missing a condition or a disease that if you were to prevent it earlier, you could have actually treated it better. False positives result in you getting overtreated and overmedicated, potentially in future complications. So we take this to be one of our core missions statements. And so one of the things that we learned in working in this last year, we focused on diabetic retinopathy, which is the leading cause of blindness. We found that we were able to use big data analysis to predict whether a person was going to get diabetic retinopathy. And what I found interesting about this was just the inconsistency in across intradoctor and interdoctor opinions on this. And so that's one of the ways I think we could actually be improving precision a lot, is just finding ways to adjudicate the differences between what the opinions are in a very robust way. And so precision does mean something slightly different to me than what Kevin is describing, but to build on what personalized medicine we were saying earlier is kind of, to me, the uniqueness of an individual and everything that makes up their health. So that includes genomics, all the omics data, as well as the clinical data sets, as well as their behavioral and phenotypic. And so all of those combined, it becomes big data. And one of the things that I hope Google can help with is organizing all that information, making it much more useful and accessible. And so that's something that we've been building tools historically in all of the other spaces for, and we're applying it now to healthcare.
Amazing. All right, so now everyone here has a snapshot of what big data analytics, what it is, how it can drive precision medicine and hopefully make huge impact for personalized medicine choices from a clinician standpoint and impact to the patient. So I'd like to now ask our panelists, how do you see the role of digital health helping optimize that delivery or endpoint of care for both the practitioner and also the patient in the precision and personalized medicine initiatives that you're involved in? Who'd like to start?
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead, Corina.
I want to start because I really want to then, I think that will tie very well with what Kevin and Katherine's roles are doing in terms of how we then move forward with the data we create. If I could please provide 2 examples at the opposite spectrum of the, I should say, precision medicine rainbow. At one hand, I would like to explore a bit on the Saudi Human Genome Program, which is focused on rare diseases. This is the most ambitious program ever taken, where we actually had to work with the government from the highest level to come up with a quick solution that would allow us in an effective way to screen kids for rare disorders. I just want to give you an idea of what it means nowadays to screen a child for a rare disease. It takes on average 7.5 years to come up with an answer. We now brought down that time to 7 days with a genetic test that costs nothing more than $25 to $200. Don't quote me on that. I don't have the salespeople with me. But point being, now this test is utilized within the clinics within Saudi. And this is an operation that also is taken, for example, within the United States at Boston Children's Hospital with one of the panels. The point being, for the future, how can we create a database that allows clinicians that are within a remote village to quickly access that database and say, based on, by the way, based on the ancestry, this is how we can connect ancestry with disease, based on the ancestry I have for this patient, based on what other clinicians have seen genetically, and on the phenotype I have, can I confidently conclude what this child has? That's one. And the other spectrum, a complex disorder or complex series of disorders, oncology, right? We are now partnered with the NCI through the MATCH trial. It's the first time when the FDA within the United States has approved an NGS-based test in collaboration, as I said, with academia, MD Anderson, Yale, NCI, MGH. They're all working with us, Pfizer, Novartis, for us to connect the molecular profile of an individual through genetic testing with the kind of treatment they should be placed on. And we'll see the efficacy of that. What does that mean then in terms of where Kevin's expertise and Katherine's expertise comes in? They need to help us integrate all the information in an efficient way for us to increase the sensitivity of the tests, the confidence we have in the tests by including tremendously more information, managing it well, and then at the end of the day, coming up with interpretation reports that we need for us to standardize, democratize those tests. So this is my comment here.
All right, amazing. 7 years to 7 days with big data. This is what we can do to empower our patients and be cost effective and get the care they need. So Katherine and Kevin, I'd like you guys to also, both of you, Katherine, if you'd like to go, or Kevin, to expand on that collaboration and how digital health would help optimize care choices for both the provider and the patient.
So in terms of the collaboration, I think there's a lot that Google's mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. So we have all these technologies that exist, as I was mentioning before, that can help deal with kind of data management and on the cloud. And if you think about being able to harness the power of numbers, you're going to end up using a lot of compute cycles, and it's something that we've seen help out the healthcare space already significantly. When they are able to move their data to cloud in a secure way, they're able to actually improve their performance times. Things that used to take 8 hours on-prem for just being able to query and do some basic analytics end up taking 15 minutes or less. And so it really does accelerate the whole process, the kind of tools we can bring to the table. And then in terms of how we hope to affect patients directly. This is more around the access, being able to make what we're helping to develop more accessible and affordable. And specifically for the diabetic retinopathy work that we've been doing, what we found was that about these kinds of medical errors occur in kind of frequently in low-income to middle-income countries, and so one of the areas that was really deficient on ophthalmologists was in India. They were short about 127,000 ophthalmologists, and so we've been able to deploy our diagnostic tools over there to help them with detecting diabetic retinopathy, and it's a very preventable, curable thing if you can catch it early. So this is the kind of thing we hope to be able to enable and give access directly to patients and change their lives.
That's a great example. Kevin, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the future of digital health is extremely bright, and we like to say at Cancer Commons, right? Maybe I say more than others, but the 20th Century Cancer Center was Sloan Kettering or Johns Hopkins. You have the doctors and the researchers and the epidemiologists, everybody in the same compound, and you can innovate that way. And what I think will happen, hopefully, out of work at Cancer Commons and others, is we'll build the 21st Century Cancer Center, which is on the internet. I mean, it's a very good use for the internet to share information and solve that last mile problem. So all the stuff that's being done will hopefully make a big difference. I don't want to burst any bubbles or anything, but I want to just get back to when you're engineering a system, it has to work with people's workflow. So if you talk to your doctor friends, if they're still in healthcare and seeing patients in the clinic, the job of a doctor basically is you see a patient every 20 minutes and you try and do the best job you can. So you don't always want big data. Sometimes you want just as much data as you need to get through the day. And people think that there's a lot of data in the healthcare clinic. It's not really quite that way. Electronic health records aren't really what people think. They're very good as billing tools, but they're not so good as searchable tools. And the clinic workflow, and if you have a product that's in digital health, you want it to integrate with the clinical workflow if you want it to be used. There's time and motion studies showing that the average physician spends 2 hours documenting on electronic health record for every 1 hour that they spend seeing patients. So those are some of the problems that I think need to be fixed if we're going to integrate digital health in a meaningful way that will help patients. We have to understand what it is that the doctors actually do, their workflow, and how we can integrate into that workflow. Otherwise, we might be engineering and designing tools that don't get used, which nobody wants to see happen.
And maybe to build off of that, it's something that we've seen is if you can improve like collaboration and essentially the connectivity between both the provider-to-provider conversations as well as patient-to-provider, and make sure those kinds of data handoffs are really well handled. And this is something we take for granted because we are, I think, used to in other industries, especially in the tech one. But I noticed that in the healthcare space, there's a little bit of work in.
Well, I was telling Ami before that we doctors are Luddites. We're sort of technology phobic, and the things that I was programming as a computer programmer in 1983, I can't do in the clinic. I don't have those tools that I know should be there, and there's a 34-year difference between that and now. They're just not available, unless you can find it on the internet somewhere.
Yeah, and to that point, we can make the most technological advances and analyze the data. However, there has to be an adoption component with education. Yeah. And I believe that all of our panelists will probably agree with that point. Yeah. And perhaps that's a perfect segue into our next question, which is, now that we've set the stage of what is big data, how does that help us make precise decisions in medicine, and the impact on personalized medicine for both the physicians and the people we treat at a huge level globally, what do you perhaps identify, each of you, as the opportunities and the challenges for the holistic wheel of digital health in both personalized and precision medicine for now and the future?
Should I say? Okay. Okay. I think we sort of said it in numerous ways, but just to sort of summarize it, the challenge right now, I would say, is for us to coordinate intelligently all the investments that are going to be done with all the research that is done, so that we can capture very well within the records, the health records, in a very compliant way, what this information can provide for the patients and for the clinicians. That's the challenge. How do we do that? And the opportunities are numerous. I should say, what do we need first? We need to standardize tests. We need, when a clinician sends a test to a lab, and then a second lab, and then a third lab, we need to get the same result. We need to have a complete interpretation of what we obtain, right? We don't have that. It's really incomplete or not available. Thank you.
Okay, great. And I know that we're towards the end of the panel, so I just want to give both Katherine and Kevin an opportunity to add to that amazing answer, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A.
I'll be quick then. I think,
Thank you.
the opportunities are tremendous to data aggregate and get better information in the hands of patients and clinicians so they can engage in shared decision-making better and optimize their health outcome. And I don't think we've used the computer in healthcare anywhere near its potential. I think we've got a big lag time there, and so there's tremendous opportunity to do that. The challenges are that integrating it in what actually happens in the clinic, I think, requires an understanding of what actually happens in the clinic. So I would urge anybody in digital health to work closely with a clinician who's actually taking care of patients in the trenches, who actually says, these are my problems, because their problems might be different than the problems you're solving, and you might want to solve the problems they have, or at least integrate the problems you're solving with the problems they're facing, so it gets used in the clinic. So everybody wants to engineer that way.
Thank you, Kevin. Great point. And Katherine?
I'll try and be quick. So the opportunity, I think, is definitely raising the bar of healthcare and making it much more accessible and accurate from a digital health perspective. And then I think the challenge that we've seen is as you get to personalized medicine, it does require more granular information on an individual to be able to actually personalize the treatment and prognosis that you're giving them. So what does that mean? That shouldn't be at the compromise of the user's privacy. And so what you can have is very sophisticated identification tools, and these kinds of things are being made more readily available as well. We know very well how to do these things, but these techniques have not been used very excessively in the healthcare space. So as we go down this path, I think that's one way that we can actually unlock this data so that it can be used, but not actually at the cost of compromising anybody's privacy.
Amazing. All right, I'd like to take just a second before we start Q&A to thank our amazing panelists today for sharing their deep expertise and knowledge on such a complicated topic in a short panel. And so now that we've set the stage for data analytics, personalized and precision medicine, and future impacts, we'd like to open it to Q&A. So is there anyone who has a question for our panelists today?
I have a question. So, going back to Corina, coming from Thermo Fisher, a conventional company trying to make a lot of innovations in the space of personalized medicine for several years. Looking at Katherine, a Google Health company, a new kid on the block trying to bring significant innovations, significant revolution. And then these are two different cultures that I wanted to get onto this panel. And I think, you guys are right there. And I wanted Kevin's feedback about how does he see conventional player like Thermo Fisher trying to bring in the consistent innovation into the healthcare sector versus Google trying to bring that lip-bound kind of a scenario where a lot of products are being developed, right from the contact lenses to a lot of other things. And how does that being seen from the two companies' DNA perspective? I mean, I know Ancestry DNA already over, but from the company's DNA perspective. Thank you.
So no, thank you. Very good question. And have you gotten 2 hours? Okay. Look, long story short, at the end of the day, if we don't come up with cost-effective applications, right, tests that have very fast turnaround time that clinicians can utilize, right, that are reimbursed, then we are going to spend a lot of time in la la land, right, if I could say that. So what does that mean? It means that we have now to coordinate our forces, all of us here, and to think in collaboration with biopharma and the FDA, how do we go ahead? Do we take a one gene approach that we know addresses, for example, association with a disease that's pretty much already well recognized by the community, and then we integrate all that information? Do we take a pathway approach? Do we take a proteomic approach? I don't think anybody has those answers. If they tell you that, I would like to discuss with them because, boy, I would work for them, right? But I think to your question is we all agree here that we cannot do it in silos anymore. Thermo Fisher, with its own many divisions, completely right now is within that sort of understanding that we cannot do it in silos within Thermo Fisher, right? So this speaks volumes, I think, for the full community here.
All right. Katherine, would you like to add anything to that?
I agree with what I've seen since I've joined is in the healthcare space specifically is that everybody is actually very open to collaboration, and it is different cultures coming together, but actually I found it to be quite open-minded. It takes a while to speak each other's language. It does, I remember just like, as people call websites portals, and we haven't done that for a really long time. And so things like that take a while for us to actually work through, but I actually find that the time's been ripe, and we have been collaborating for the last few years, which is why we have like the innovations that you're starting to see come out of Thermo Fisher.
I would say, we're thrilled that Google's working on healthcare and solving a problem like accuracy of diagnosing diabetic retinopathy. We're thrilled that Thermo Fisher is working on next-generation sequencing in collaboration with other partners. One of the things I like about Cancer Commons is that it's a not-for-profit, and part of the problem that people are in silos and not collaborating as much as they could is that the economic incentives make it that way in a capitalistic society. So the not-for-profit aspect of Cancer Commons allows us to be a data aggregator in a way that's neutral. So all these companies could come together and we could aggregate the data and build n-dimensional matrices and build the point-of-care epidemiology tools that we need to get it to the clinic. So any innovation is good. I like to see innovation that makes a difference in the clinic. So sometimes smaller companies can do that and bring that into the clinic quicker than larger companies, but there are innovative people everywhere, just as there are great doctors everywhere. And one of the nice things in healthcare now is every doctor anywhere should have access to the internet. So ideally, any doctor in any country or any rural area could optimize the care of their patient if the data was at their fingertips and the economic incentives were aligned.
Amazing. Any other questions for our panelists?
Thank you for your insights into the future of digital medicine. As you know, average human being goes to the doctor twice a year, probably gets 10 minutes if he or she is lucky enough on each of those visits. Katherine's point, the environment has a significant role in wellness and sickness of any individual human being. Now, the convergence of cell biology with the technology in the next 5-10 years, for someone who is suffering with COPD or asthma, I'm not that patient, but I'm just asking a question. What do you see in terms of improved sensors around the clock, when he's not with a doctor, he or she is not with a doctor, and our understanding of genomics, how the lives of asthmatic COPD patients could improve, in your views, in the next 5 years?
Let me answer that quickly, because that's a little bit more clinical. And I have asthma, so that's probably why I went to medical school. Every time I went to the doctor, they said, "You're going to go to medical school, right?" And I said, okay. I think that sensors for those two diseases can actually have a lot of interesting data. As an engineer, I think you can measure oxygen level and respiration and integrate that data in a way that might be useful for the clinician. And ideally, you want to take that data aggregation and make it into a dashboard that's easily readable, because as you said, you may only have 10 minutes with the doctor. Managing COPD and asthma, though, in clinic is really a lot about talking to the patients, that personalized approach. How often does this happen? How often does that happen? How many nights do you wake up short of breath? And it's actually, if you look at that field in particular, the percent of patients who take their inhalers correctly is pretty low. And just doing something like getting people to take their inhalers correctly, I know there's some startups around that or thing, but that's a very personalized thing where you have to tell the patient how to take their medicines, make sure they're doing it right, and that actually does take time. So I think if you can make the situation more efficient in clinic, that they can spend more time actually improving the health outcome, that's the optimal thing. Genetics in asthma and COPD, I'm not sure. So there's genomic aspects to both those diseases. There's environmental aspects. I'm not sure how much genomics will play in the next 5 years to improve those diseases, but I think it may stratify phenotype, if you will, of those diseases a little bit more and help pick the medicines that work a little bit more better. And that also has to be integrated, because right now we pick our medicines for those two diseases empirically. We don't use any data elements to do it. We just sort of iterate with the patient and see what works. So if there's some genomics that become Bayesian priors we can use in clinic to improve COPD and asthma, we want to. But again, COPD and asthma, if you look at the health economics, they're misaligned. People of lower socioeconomic status have much poorer control of COPD and asthma than people of higher socioeconomic status. So if we can use digital elements to align the economic incentives, we can probably improve the outcomes just with the medicines we have, just with improving workflow and things like that.
Yeah, and Katherine, go ahead.
I like that question because it kind of bridges the two passions I have, which is the environment and health. And so the one thing that also in terms of sensors, not just sensors on people, but sensors in the environment can be collecting that
Right.
kind of data, and it can detect the type of pollutants. And then if you have big data, you can do analysis as to if you're seeing an increase in, conditions, asthma or COPD in those areas, then you can start kind of making the correlation between what's happening in the environment and potentially preventing that in the future.
I just want to put my population genetic hat on that question. For complex disorders like COPD, you need a lot of data. And it's not just genomics here, it's proteomics, metabolomics, and the environmental factors were these two.
Yeah.
Right,
So
parts
thanks,
of
panel. It was sorry to interrupt. It was a really informative session, but due to short of time and time crunch, we won't be able to take any further questions.
Okay.
If anybody is having any question, please feel free to reach out to the panel outside.
All right. So just to wrap up, the last question really demonstrated holistic data sharing, whether it's from the environment or from big data. I also have asthma, so I completely agree. All right, I want to give a big round of applause to our panelists. I believe we'll be out in the hall here for a few minutes if there's any questions, and thank you for having us today.